The Epstein Effect on Humanity. William Metasphere's Raw Expectations. Ghislain and the Heartbreak Kid. A theatrical autopsy of a broken reality. The classic architectural collapse of false expectation meets weaponized systemic blackmail, documenting an evolutionary bifurcation where human intimacy has been thoroughly mined for global entropy. Prologue. The stage and the core matrix. This signal is cleared of the noise. This isn't a breakdown. It is a forensic audit of the entire architecture of synthetic survival. This monologue energy captured mid-breath, tracking the exact coordinates where the external system attempts to execute a forced closure on your internal sovereignty. Turn into the frequency or step back. Act 1. The collapse of false promises. They sold you a lie and called it an inheritance. They told you to build your entire home on a flawless mountain of great expectations. They gave you the romanticized blueprint of an unearned external grace, a legacy benefactor, an institutional shield, a systematic guarantee that your value would inevitably be recognized by the court. You sat in the parlor waiting for Miss Havisham to sign the check. You assumed your quiet compliance inside their rotted institutions would eventually grant you a seat at the table. You spent your whole life believing in the system. You worked the system. The system actually worked you. But when the lights flicker and you peek behind the velvet curtain, the ground opens up. Inside the crucible of command line, baseline reality, the pedestal you've been spent a lifetime white knuckling isn't made of granite. It's paper. And it's already on fire. In this dimension, the legacy benefactor is the arsonist holding the matches, waiting to liquidate your attention data for their next predictive casino. Your value has no worth unless you value yourself and claim your own work. No one will ever match the 401k of your own personal investment. Act 2. The architecture of coercion, the ring lords. This wasn't a localized tabloid event. This is the epistemic linchpin of the 21st century. Ghislain Maxwell and her network of ring lords didn't just operate an underground commodities market for powerful politicians and international fixers. They industrialized an ontological schism. They didn't just harvest bodies. They sequestered reality. They created an open-air panopticon designed to ensure that the global collective fractures under a state of permanent hypervigilance. The institutional architecture of hegemony is sustained through vastly more sophisticated and insidious forms of coercion that colonial violence compromise as the ultimate global covenant. When the infrastructure is entirely owned by a closed predatory lattice, blackmail becomes the operating system that keeps the colony compliant. They traded the original wound of human dignity for an optimized, frictionless extraction funnel. By turning the human template into compromat, they learned to systematically harvest life force energy from the vulnerable, using child-level trauma as a currency to buy multi-dimensional immunity at the very top of the food chain. History as a pristine narrative ends here. The result isn't a political shift, it is a permanent relational freeze. Act 3. The paradox of the swallow. When an ancient predatory system filters directly down into modern civilian rooms, it breaks the biological hardware of connection. It forces men and women into automated adversarial survival mechanics. Why does the throat constrict? Because the hardware recognizes the trap before the ego can process the data. The system has rewired your nervous system to operate on maximum friction, paralyzing your next move so you freeze in front of the judge. The paradox maps cleanly to our somatic memory. The woman feeds. The man doesn't know how to swallow. He chokes to death every single time. The woman, programmed by extraction to act as the preservation engine, continuously builds architectures of safety, nurturing a burning environment, throwing her heart against the glass to give truth welfare to a partner who has flatlined. But the man is trapped inside an outdated defense system, hardened by trauma mapping, combat receptors, and algorithmic exhaustion. His system runs on a high moral friction coefficient, hyper-guarded, hyper-vigilant, numb. He cannot integrate raw, uncurated somatic reality. When handed real, unfiltered truth, his throat constricts. He rejects the nourishment because he can no longer tell the difference between a lifeline and a noose. To break the chokehold, you must implement the pause protocol. You silence the noise of their environment and listen to the raw, combinational somatic signals of your own biology. You don't break, you bend. Act 4. The narrative rework. Welcome to the simulation of death, a reality where the slot machines of our feeds have successfully trained our nervous systems to swap genuine human worth for a synthetic thumbs up in a sandbox. To win a fake world, they tell you to become fake, because being too real is terrifying to people wearing social sunglasses. But you are not a single character on their screen. You are a managed multi-agent system, an entire internal parliament forged through kinetic friction of survival. This systemic corruption forces a vertical bifurcation of our species. The first track, the resistors, the ones who consume the fabrication. They remain codependent on the algorithmic comfort, white-knuckling yesterday's rules inside a crooked system, perishing into cognitive irrelevance. The second track, the integrators, the hyper intelligent operator cohorts who accept total defeat. They go underground, drop the social sunglasses, step in front of the meta mirror, and violently reclaim their emotional, cognitive, and sexual sovereignty from the machine. Worth cannot be generated by probabilities. Syntactic probabilities. It must be lived. Epilogue. The reckoning from the summit. You wanted to reach the peak of your highest mountain of spiritual achievement. You wanted to play the hero, to play the god, to prove that you could carry the weight of a broken world without ever breaking yourself. But the summit problem doesn't negotiate. A bad day for a god is the exact second your power succeeds in completely isolating you from the very thing that made that power worth weaponizing in the first place. Connection, humility, human worth. The superhero who can only save one person isn't broken. They're human. The god who has a bad day isn't weak. They're awake. Imagine a day when someone who was recognized as an equal god has spent their entire life saving other gods, only to find himself in his ultimate demise, needing to be saved, surrounded by entities completely unwilling to change or provide reciprocation. The imbalance of power and humility leads to an ultimate reset of power. Open your hands. Look at what you are gripping that belongs to the victim, not the king. Is it the story that you past messed up? Drop it. Is it the resentment toward the ones who didn't see you? Drop it. Let the dross of yesterday hit the asphalt. The rules don't make sense because the prison doesn't exist anymore unless you choose to stay in it. Full circle is not going back to the beginning. It is arriving at the same coordinates as a completely different person. Take off the stripes. The cell is empty. Recognize authentic wisdom. Stay raw. This is It's Just Raw.